Okay, so welcome to another talk, and the title of this talk is Light Speed C as Limiting Speed is Just a Math Mistake by Einstein. So I'm picking up an issue from my talk which I gave to the Alternative Natural Philosophy Association this year. As presented in that talk, I pointed out that what Einstein has said after 1905 seems influenced with his communications with Sommerfeld, but putting that issue aside and just looking at what Einstein has in his papers, and also a reminder that from this source by Arthur Miller, he points out the usual translation of Einstein's paper on special relativity in 1905 is a bad translation, and I think he's thinking of these terms more from a historian's perspective on the physics. The usual translation into English of Einstein's 1905 paper on special relativity is this one, and it's the site given. Miller also points out that footnotes in the translated paper come from Sommerfeld and were not in the original. Thus, what was originally being said in the German in 1905 should be looked at from a better translation into English than the usual translation and without Sommerfeld's footnotes. Now, this is a reminder who Sommerfeld was. He's mentioned in Wikipedia. He was a German theoretical physicist. And Sommerfeld was in communication with Einstein, and this is what Einstein said in a letter to Sommerfeld on 5th of January 1908. Highly honoured Professor, many thanks for sending me your latest papers. Of great interest to me, of course, is the one on the speed of light, or speed of signal propagation, and he means light signal propagation. Last summer I had a lively exchange of letters on this subject with Professor Wayne. I didn't succeed in convincing my view that Maxwell-Lorentz equations can be replaced by action at a distance propagating at the speed of light c, and that speed of light c is the speed of light in vacuum, free from the influence of fields. I concluded that a signal whose propagation is due solely to electromagnetic interaction between point particles cannot possibly propagate faster than c. So Einstein 1908 seems to be making changes to what he was saying in 1905 in his special relativity paper, i.e. in regards to the speed of light signal propagation. Note also he is thinking in terms of point particles, and I've pointed out on previous occasions that is Boschkowitsch's theory. So Einstein is working from Boschkowitsch's theory. In this paper of 1905 on special relativity, Einstein was not talking about speed being limited by light speed c. Instead, it was something coming afterwards, Syria 1908. In the original German paper 1905, he was not making the claim electromagnetic interaction between point particles cannot possibly propagate faster than c, and there was no maths in the 1905 paper to back up such a claim. I complain a lot about relativity undergoing amendments, changes. I call it moving goalposts. To me, what he did was a change in the theory, and the changed theory is not the original theory. Moving the goalposts is supposed to be a fallacy, but those who believe in Einstein's relativity don't seem to believe it is a fallacy and keep making changes to relativity. And Einstein is one of the people doing that. Thus, in 1905, we have no claim that electromagnetic interaction between point particles cannot possibly propagate faster than c. But in 1908, that is changed to the claim electromagnetic interaction between point particles cannot possibly propagate faster than c. Einstein, 1908, is making a math mistake when he says this. Einstein is well known as making many math mistakes, and this is just another math mistake. Unfortunately, this particular math mistake has gone unnoticed for decades and has been taught to many students, creating generations of physicists with false beliefs about relativity. It makes you wonder how many other false beliefs there are about relativity. Also note, since Einstein's theory was really about point particles, as mentioned earlier, when it comes to waves, or talking about waves, it is really disturbances in a collection of particles. Wikisource has a translation of this paper by Sommerfeld. I hope it's a good translation. It's difficult for me to check all translations, and as I pointed out, I've now found translations can be untrustworthy. But hoping is correct. It says, in electrodynamics, which was founded by Einstein on the principle of relativity, superluminal velocities are impossible under any circumstances, both as a convention velocity of a charge or as a propagation velocity of an electrodynamic disturbance. And it cites a reference for that. The reference it cites is to one of Einstein's papers. And we can get the English translation of that paper by Einstein, this place here, and I'm also hoping that translation is good enough. So this is what the paper says. Note capital V is being used to mean light speed c. We normally denote light speed in vacuum as c, but in this paper by Einstein he's using the capital V. And in this paper he has relativistic addition of velocities. So you've got velocity, capital W, and velocity V, small v. So note it is a 1907 paper, so it's still Syria 1908. The equation he's using for velocity addition is called relativistic velocity addition. It might be better to call it speed instead of velocity at pass. That addition is based on treating velocities through the Lorentz transformations. So in this 1907 paper, Einstein was thinking in terms of the impossibility of speeds faster than light speed in vacuum C, but he wasn't saying it in his 1905 paper, which is his first relativity paper. So I remind you of Marek, who is Einstein's first wife. She was studying physics with Einstein, and the first paper on relativity might have been with her as a collaborator. So thus the first theory might have been Einstein theory, and that was a different theory than what it was later changed into. So a reminder of what Einstein was saying in 1907, considering faster than light speed in vacuum C, he says, the result signifies that we would have to consider as possible a transfer mechanism whose use would produce an effect which precedes the cause, accompanied by an act of will, for example, end quote, i.e. it would be backwards in time travel, information sent from future into the past, etc. What is surprising is that he does not consider it impossible, well, not totally impossible, and he says, even though in my opinion this result does not contain a contradiction from a purely logical point of view. So note here, he only has an opinion and he has nothing else to back up his claim. So he's thinking that speeds greater than c would be backwards time travel. And he thinks that shouldn't be allowed. Einstein says it conflicts so absolutely with the character of our experience that the impossibility of assumption capital W greater than capital V is sufficiently proven by this result. And so, as I've noted earlier, he's using capital V as light speed c. And so he's saying W, capital W, has a speed greater than c in the above. And it's not really a proof in my view. What he is stating is an opinion which results must be another assumption being made in 1907 being added to special relativity. It's not in the original German 1905 theory, the Einstein theory. There is no backward time travel for speeds greater than c in the Einstein theory. Note, Einstein 1907-1908 is thinking it impossible to go faster than c, and if it were possible then it would give backwards time travel. So now picking up on these equations, you've got the Lorentz Einstein transformations and the Galilean transformations. In quantum physics you have this thing called a correspondence principle, and you can see that at Wikipedia. It explains how quantum physics connects to classical physics. Really need the same thing as a correspondence principle for relativity, but often don't hear that. It's not often heard that term used in that context. So the correspondence principle would have to be about how special relativity connected to Newtonian physics. The Lorentz transformations usually deemed special relativity, and the Galilean transformations usually deemed Newtonian physics. And that could be arguable, but putting aside those issues, so we'd need a correspondence principle how those things are connected. If you go back to the Einstein theory of 1905, there is mention of Lorentz transformations but no mention of Galilean transformations, so no correspondence principle was given, and Galilean transformations came after 1905. And that's reference for that is from this book by Arthur Miller. He points out the Galilean transformations came in 1911. However, other sources give it as different dates, but it's still a date after 1905. So the correspondence principle for relativity came after 1905 and was wrong, of course. need to give an example of what is said. This was published in 1934. And this book says of the Lorentz transformations, when the relative velocity between the systems V is small compared with that of light, they reduce to so-called Galilean transformation equations. And many texts say the same thing, and that is false. And the relevant paper is this one by Ralph, Two Myths About Special Relativity, and he points out that the Lorentz transformations do not reduce to the Galilean transformations when the ratio V divided by speed is small, which is contrary to what is taught, i.e. students are taught to believe in false maths. Maths of relativity looks deceptively simple, but has a fatal flaw, which has resulted in it being misdealt with. What is taught as maths of relativity is mathematically false. Lorentz transformations do not reduce to Galilean transformations as V tends to 0, contrary to what is taught. Lorentz transformation for length, x prime equal to gamma, and that's all times x minus vt. As v tends to 0, the gamma tends to 1. Thus, the Lorentz transformation tends to x prime equal to x minus vt, and that happens to be the Galilean transformation, so that thing is okay. While for the Lorentz transformation for time, we have t prime is equal to gamma, which is times t minus vx divided by c squared. As v tends to 0, then gamma tends to 1 as before, and the Lorentz transformation for time tends to t prime is equal to t minus vx divided by c squared, and it's not tending to the Galilean transformation for time, which is t prime is equal to t. The term vx divided by c squared is not tending to 0. The mistake has been made of assuming the term vx divided by c squared as tending to 0, which it doesn't do, because as v tends to 0 can increase the term x divided by c squared to counteract that, i.e. can make x divided by c squared bigger as you make v smaller. A thing to note is talking about as v tends to 0, not talking about v equals 0, for which both Lorentz transformation and Galilean transformations reduce to x prime is equal to x and t prime is equal to t. Instead, talking about Lorentz transformation for time tends to t prime is equal to t minus vx divided by c squared as v tends to 0, which is not tending to the Galilean transformation of time for t prime is equal to t. As noted, the relativistic speed addition, which is shown here, is based on Lorentz transformations, where v and u prime are added relatively to give speed u. The speed u is restricted to being less than light speed c or equal to speed c, thus giving light speed c as a limiting speed in this equation above. But because Lorentz transformations do not reduce to Galilean transformations at low speed, this restriction of limiting speed doesn't apply to Galilean transformations. In Galilean transformations, any speed is allowed without that restriction. Thus, as using Galilean transformations in analysis of moving bodies, those objects can go faster than light speed c, which is denoted ftl. Only artificial setup of Lorentz transformations that are restricting the speed, which in general does not apply. And that is Einstein's mathematics mass mistake that leads into this false belief that c is a limited speed. It is not a limited speed, but many people have been taught to believe that false belief. There are experiments such as, so for example, this article claims that Mozart transmitted at 4.7 times light speed c. Now people have difficulty believing that. They have their false belief about FTL not being possible due to what Einstein said and his mistake in the mathematics, and so they tend not to want to believe that, and they then want to come up with this idea that useful information cannot be transmitted faster than light speed c, whereas non-useful information can be transmitted faster than light speed c. So in this case where you got Mozart, that can be thought of as useful information. So the claim is being made that useful information is being transmitted faster than light speed c. And unfortunately the people who've got their mental block of having their false belief about relativity, they don't want to believe that that is possible. If you go to the mathematics which is being presented, there's no difference being highlighted in the information being transferred as to whether it's useful or non-useful. So useful information can be transferred FTL faster than light speed c. Thank you, that's the end.